I just want to let folks know we've got some of the most amazing researchers here who have provided incredible information. The American Intelligence Media Conclave. Here with me today, welcome everyone.
Hi.
We are going to talk about the machinations behind the curtain to do with everything from the Queen to the Senior Executive Service to the Privy Council control in the world, in the Dominion countries of the Crown. All of this also to do with technological, intellectual thefts, leader technologies, all of it. We're going to jump in here, though, and narrow it down and start with the interesting pointed question. It came out recently, a couple weeks ago, that in the office where Dominion was located, okay, dealing with the event at hand that we're all talking about lately, there was both in Toronto, the Dominion offices and the Open Societies Foundation's, George Soros's offices in the same building in Toronto. And of course, Dominion took off, and we have one Open Society's director stepping down, Patrick Gaspard, and then Lord Malloch Brown stepping in as the director of Open Societies Foundation. That's the baseline. And I wanted to ask you all to jump in and tell me what you know of the connection between Open Societies, Lord Malloch Brown, and Dominion.
The story is convoluted, and I think intentionally so. What's happening in Canada is actually a fairly small part of this much bigger picture. And I would say, first of all, Canada is a Dominion country of the British Empire. So that's one clue. And secondly, if you open up the lens on this, all roads lead back to London. And what is interesting is the way the current narrative about Dominion is attempting to be focused on Venezuela. When we were first looking at fraud related to the events of the day, that we saw this character that loomed large in the story, and his name was Lord Mark Malloch Brown. And what we need to realize is that the operative word here is Lord. He became a Lord in 2007, right after he had become a knight, and right before he was appointed to the British Privy Council. I think what we need to realize is that all roads, like a hub and a spoke, lead back to London, not Venezuela. The activities that we're watching have been in development for well over 100 years. And the latest round of this development occurred after the formation of the United Nations in 1946. That was British work to achieve their ultimate goal, which was to reorganize the British Empire, the Dominions, as a new sort of corporatist world government that we here call the New World Order, and that they have been intent on doing that ever since the Dominions, back over 100 years, started asking for independence. What the folks in London decided to do was not rule so much by the monarchy, but rule by corporations that then would operate in all of these Dominion countries and therefore control the economies of these countries going forward. And so what we're seeing is a consistent roll-up of the Dominions. And it's interesting that Lord Mark Malloch Brown has served in just about every senior post you can think of within the United Nations. And in doing that, he specifically focused on the development of this electronic election rigging system, which he took to South America to experiment with and run campaigns in Bolivia, in the Philippines, and then eventually in Venezuela. So Venezuela was a testing bed for this particular activity, and by the time they rigged the Venezuela election, they knew they had what they needed, and they rolled the business back up to being run out of London, out of Silicon Valley, and eventually out of Canada, as well as Venezuela.
So the Venezuela diversion, that came later, after this was already developed.
Correct.
The Hugo Chavez thing is the big, smoke and mirrors. That goes back to, I think there's both the controlled demolition, but really the controlled lassoing of control back over all the first world countries back under the crown control.
Right. There were really four threads to this Dominion technology. There was Smartmatic, there was Sequoia, there was Diebold ES&S, and then there was Hart Intercivic. And so essentially what these people were able to do under the leadership of Lord Mark Malloch Brown is they got the Department of Justice during the Obama reign to specifically order all of these technologies to embed a piece of software called Optech, which Sidney Powell refers to as the common DNA. That was Optech, which Smartmatic purchased from Sequoia in 2005, and later Smartmatic bought Sequoia. So essentially, we've got these Russian nested dolls of relationships, but it all rolls back up to London and to Lord Mark Malloch Brown.
Every time you hear that something comes out of Canada, it comes out of London. Optech was born in Canada. Dominion says they were born in Canada, but they've been changing their Wikipedia page so fast that you can't now find the truth. And they've been changing the internet sites that you can find so fast that it'll make your head swim. And then they've conflated Dominion with Smartmatic, and then they have forgotten to state that Mark Malloch Brown was there at the founding of Smartmatic. He was there in 1974 as an assistant to the High Counselor for Refugees from the United Nations when Optech was created as a DARPA project that was born out of Canada but run with American money to give the CIA what was their standard way of manipulation of elections. So it's very simple. It's a very small group of people. And if you want to look at the core of it, you'd go back to the British East India Company and the type of corporatism which is still going on today. And Mark Malloch Brown is a perfect example because he's a member of the cabinet. He's a founding member of the World Economic Forum. He's held so many positions at the United Nations that you can hardly name all of them. And now he's on so many boards as a major player through basically his Privy Council duties, which Privy Council is even more on the inside than the cabinet. And I believe that he's on the inside of the inside along with Geoffrey Patty. This is a mafia. This is a British mafia of sorts. And they use Canada as their outsourcing maneuver to sneak into America. That's the reason Dominion is supposedly centered in Canada. But it isn't. It's now owned by Staple Street, I believe. It's one of their big investors owns them. And you can't keep track of who owns what. It always goes back, as Michael said, to British sources. And it's everyone involved in the corporatism of the Privy Council, which is a self-serving interest group that uses the monarchy as their cover because the Queen can't be prosecuted. You aren't even allowed to ask about the Queen's business. So if you were to ask in Britain about Mark Malloch Brown owning SGO Smartmatic and whether they manipulated the elections, he could simply say, I'm a cabinet member, I'm a Privy Council member. You can't ask me that. That's the Queen's business. This really, unfortunately, seldom ever gets addressed, that our supposed best friend, Britain, is our worst enemy.